using a smartphone, they're using AI, and which is the most prominent use of AI today without even knowing that everything that they use, right from their maps to the messaging to the social media, banking, everything is powered by AI today, and it's in their pocket, in their phone right now.
So it's a good thing? I say that with a little sarcasm. I mean, how do we, like, it can be very helpful in supply chain management if you think about it, in governance. I remember doing some stories about venture capitalists being able to look at smaller deals that maybe wouldn't make sense to spend time on, but using technology, using AI, they can kind of screen through things. So how do you think about AI, the good, the bad, and the ugly?
That's a great question, Carol. And, I think there's a lot of goodness that AI can bring to humanity as a whole, but there are side effects as well. And today we are in that era where everybody is focused on the value creation of AI, and we see these high-level headlines on all the bad things AI is doing. The reality is that it's a balance. There is a lot of goodness and there's a lot of value, positive value, things what you mentioned, supply chain optimization, translation, patient diagnosis. There's a lot of goodness that's coming out, but there's also unintended consequences that's coming into to the forefront as AI is scaling out into more and more applications.
Okay, I want to get to some of those unintended consequences, but I also have, I think I come from a place that a lot of our listeners and viewers can relate to, but the idea when you're on the phone trying to call an airline, for example, or perhaps get something fixed, and you have AI trying to work with you, and you just keep repeating representative over and over again, right? Because the bot just isn't doing it for you, and I think that's frustrating for a lot of consumers.
That's true, Tim. I'm with you. I had a lot of challenges, especially with my accent, which doesn't fit into the norm, right? To communicate anything, and at some point you're just yelling representative, right? So look, the reality is the technology is still very in its infancy, right? Because the research is still happening. It's not a fully developed technology, but we're using it in the real world. Since it's not fully developed, there are that unintended consequences that's not well thought through. So think of it, you're using something that is not fully mature, right? And it is growing along with you while you're using it. It's learning from you. It's learning my accent and adopting it. And in the next iteration, somebody with a similar accent as mine, it will be easier to recognize. So it is learning and growing, and that's why there's this element of patience that needs to come into play, because it's not being trained for every possible scenario.
What about, in a world where we are increasingly, whether we're talking, actually, what, hang on a second, because I haven't thought about transparency, because I do think we don't realize the amount of AI that's out there. We're going to do a little bit of news, and then we'll come back and continue our conversation. We are talking with the author of Trustworthy, a business guide for navigating trust and ethics in AI. We're going to get back to her in just a moment, because I do feel like there's a million questions.
A million questions. I also want to talk about bias and try to get an understanding of when AI is developed, how we avoid biases being translated into AI.
All right, let's get back, though, to that world of national news and to Nancy Lyons. She's in our 99.1 newsroom in D.C. Hey, Nancy.
Thanks, Carol. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is still taking questions from the Senate Judiciary Committee, with each member having 30 minutes to query the Supreme Court nominee. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina brought up past grievances of how Justice Amy Coney Barrett was treated by Democrats when they asked her about her religious beliefs. So he asked Jackson about hers.
Do you attend church regularly?
Well, Senator, I am reluctant to talk about my faith in this way, just because I want to be mindful of the need for the public to have confidence in my ability to separate out my personal views.
Aides say President Biden has been watching some of Jackson's testimony and says he's proud of how she's conducted herself. Well, as Russia continues its bloody war against Ukraine, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is urging his colleagues to send a message to Vladimir Putin and revoke most favored trade status with Moscow.
Every drop of Ukrainian blood demands a response, and the United States has an obligation to stand behind this young democracy.
Schumer says it's important to pass the legislation before President Biden heads to Brussels this week. The House has already approved the measure. Chinese investigators say the pilots of a doomed China Eastern Airlines flight failed to respond to multiple calls from Chinese air traffic controllers after tipping into a deadly nosedive. They're still sifting through evidence to determine why the Boeing 737-800 plane carrying 132 people crashed in southern China yesterday. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts.
All right, Ann, thank you so much. We're going to get back to our guest in just a moment. But in the meantime, we talked a little bit about Tesla. Certainly, we saw the share price moving up again in today's session. In fact, I think it was one of the top performers in the S&P 500, up about 8%. And I think it's up for a 6-day surging, as we said. And I think it pushed the company's market cap back above $1 trillion. We ended up there, right? Yep. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, above $1 trillion.
Above $1 trillion.
So we're back there.
Okay, where do you want to start here? Do you want to just talk about, like, okay, well...
Can we just go to it?
Let's just go to it.
Well, the news is, right, they opened up
a new car factory.
In Berlin, outside Berlin.
Yeah, so they've got this this new factory. It's in a plant outside Berlin. The opening ceremony was on Tuesday, today. 30 Model Ys. They handed them over to customers in front of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Also, CEO Elon Musk followed through on his promise to dance as he did when Tesla opened in Shanghai 2 years ago. Check out. Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this, but the whole point of us doing this is because we wanted to show you a video of Elon Musk.
We're really sorry for everybody on radio, but it's, you know how you go to a wedding and there's always like a relative who just doesn't know how to dance?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're seeing.
You know what? If you go to that wedding...
we love that relative who can't dance.
Well, if you go to that...
Sometimes I'm that relative.
That's what I was going to say. If you can't find that relative, Carol, it's you.
Exactly.
You know, okay, so Elon Musk...
That's why there's always a lot of alcohol when you're dancing, so that nobody like views each other and gets too critical.
According to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, Elon Musk is still the wealthiest person in the world, ahead of Jeff Bezos. He's got a net worth now of $235.2 billion. So
he can dance however the heck he wants to.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
It's really fun. I mean, this is a guy who, like, kind of just does his thing.
He does. It's a big deal, though, that Tesla now has factories that span the globe, right? Shanghai, they've got the U.S., they've got Germany as well.
It's essential to Elon Musk capturing more of Europe's expanding EV market. He tweeted last week that he was working on a new master plan for the car maker and wrote just on Monday that scaling to extreme size would be a main subject. You know, I still give him props for really waking up the auto industry, the global auto industry, when it comes to EVs. And so dance however you want, Elon.
Dance like nobody's watching.
Exactly.
The Tri-State Business Report is brought to you by Audi. Don't let someone else drive off an Audi model you've always wanted. Visit your Tri-State area Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today, or visit AudiOffers.com for more information.
Breaking news first. War in Ukraine.
Vladimir Zelensky says Ukrainian forces are still holding Russian troops at bay.
The White House says Russian President Vladimir Putin's back is against the wall.
The EU is debating this possibility of a ban on Russian crude imports.
China does not want to see violence in Ukraine.
It will only be sought if Vladimir Putin and Zelensky sit down and work out a peace deal.
For the latest headlines and the effect on the markets, stay with Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. This is a Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. Brookfield Properties will power its One Manhattan West office skyscraper with renewable energy from upstate New York. Another unit of parent Brookfield Asset Management will provide hydropower for the 67-story tower, part of the 8-acre Manhattan West project on the borough's far west side. Billionaire Rupert Murdoch is listing a pair of condos in New York for $78 million. Less than a decade after buying them and conducting an extensive renovation. The News Corp founder is selling his $62 million triplex penthouse and a smaller apartment on a lower floor for $16 million. New Jersey officials have awarded $1 million in grants to install electric vehicle charging stations in 24 tourist areas. The idea is to boost tourism by reassuring visitors with electric vehicles that they can come to a vacation spot in Jersey and not run out of power to get back home. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
The Audi Q5 represents everything we've learned from building one of the world's most progressive vehicles. With forward-thinking technology like standard rear cross traffic assist, this car was born to non-conform. The Audi Q5 is here. Progress is never blending in.
Don't let someone else drive off in the Audi model you've always wanted. Visit your Tri-State area Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today, or visit AudiOffers.com for more information.
It's 4:45 on Wall Street. Time for drive time traffic. We do it every 15 minutes right here on Bloomberg Radio. Ed Kalegi, the Long Island Expressway. What do you see?
The LIE in Queens, Tim, eastbound at Woodhaven Boulevard, broken down car in the right lane. It's enough to cause a heavy 10-minute delay coming over from the BQE. Even after you get past this at Woodhaven Boulevard, it does remain slow. Word of the aftermath of a car fire northbound cross Bronx at Jerome Avenue. That's why it's slow coming off the George Washington Bridge. Southbound cross Bronx, an accident still at Jerome Avenue. 45 minutes in the Bruckner interchange. A heavy ride in Manhattan, both sides of town. Yes, all the way on up from about the mid-50s or so. Outbound Holland Tunnel 40, outbound Lincoln Tunnel, about a 30-minute delay. The ride in New Jersey still trouble 23 northbound Boonton Avenue in Butler. An accident, one lane is blocked. A very heavy 15-minute delay from 287. Bloomberg 11:30, three-day weather. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 35 to 40. Wednesday afternoon showers, high near 50. Thursday, rain, high in the mid-50s. Friday, partly sunny, still could be a shower, high 55 to 60. Partly sunny in New York, we're 58 degrees. HGTV's Build It Forward in collab with Lowe's in 100 hometowns. We'll select 5 local heroes for a surprise home renovation of their dreams. Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern on HGTV and Discovery Plus with the best ride in and out of the city. I'm Ed Kalegi, Bloomberg 11:30. Bloomberg Business Week continues.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Adobe shares now lower by about 0.5%. Adobe delivered a disappointing outlook for the current period, suggesting increased competition is making a dent against the company's signature design software. Stocks rebounded today while the sell-off in treasuries deepened as traders weighed hawkish comments by Fed Chair Jay Powell, which signaled the central bank will take more aggressive measures to tame inflation. The S&P 500 index advanced, recovering half its losses now from a sell-off that started in January. S&P up today by 50 points, a gain of 1.1%. The Dow up 254, up 0.7. NASDAQ higher today by 2%. 10-year yield 2.37%, 2-year yield 2.16%. Spot gold down 0.8%, $19.21 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude was down 0.3, $111.76 a barrel on WTI. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, I want to get back to our guest. Bina Amanat, she is Executive Director at Global Deloitte AI Institute, Head of Trustworthy AI and Ethical Tech at Deloitte, and the book she's got out, Trustworthy, a business guide for navigating trust and ethics in AI. I want to get back to transparency or bring that up, but Bina, let me ask you, is AI what's going to determine in a self-driving car whether or not you hit the dog, the cat, or the cyclist?
Or none, hopefully?
Or none, hopefully? None? Right. Thank you, Tim.
That's a great question. And I think, it is, at this point, it is really up to the company who's creating the self-driving car who's determining it till we get regulations in place. And my book really gives that company a structure to think about it and potentially offer those options to the consumer, or potentially, bring together a focus group to decide it, but there needs to be a structured way of thinking it, unlike just building that technology and deploying it out into the world and then, seeing what happens. So I think there needs to be more mindfulness, more thought put into what are the possible scenarios and how do you mitigate those.
What are the questions that executives come to you with when it comes to AI? Like, what are their goals in sort of building out projects that rely on AI technology? And then what do you have to tell them in terms of guardrails and in terms of making sure they don't make mistakes of the past?
That's a great question, Tim. And many of them are just looking for how can I get value from AI from my business? And there are two options. One is either through new revenue opportunities, meaning building new AI products that couldn't be done with existing technology. So there's brand new revenue opportunities. Or the other is optimizing or cost savings, right? How do you optimize your current supply chain process, for example, to get better value for the goods that you buy from your sourcers? How do you optimize your document management, for example? So those are the two ways you can get value from AI for your business today. And most of them at that point are not thinking about guardrail or the ways it could go wrong. So really, it is up to us as the general audience, as the public, and definitely me in my role is to raise that awareness. Look, you're focusing on all the positive value creation, but there are risks associated with it. The obvious ones are the brand and reputational risks, but there are really bad things that can happen if you do not think about the ethical implications up front and put in those guardrails.
Like what? What's the thing that you worry most about in terms of AI and maybe the misuse or the unethical impact of it?
The thing I worry most about is that we are not thinking about the ways it could go wrong. And you can take any scenario, right? And the challenge is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. There is no single answer. Like you think of something as, as simple as personalized marketing, right? Where you are taking consumer data, matching it with products, and providing personalized ads, right? But that same technology, the AI, can be used for providing potentially personalized healthcare. Now, when you think about bias in this scenario, bias in the personalized marketing world means, the wrong ad to the wrong person. But in the healthcare space, it means the wrong diagnosis to the wrong person, which is terrible, right? So I think it has to be weighted. So what I try to make sure is you think about the nuances, the context, because AI as a whole is about intelligence. And intelligence is different based on the scenario, the solution, the industry that you're in. It is not going to be a one-size-fits-all. So how do you weigh it as a CEO to say which are the risks I'm willing to take and which are the risks I'm not willing to take and that I need to think more about?
I'm interested in when, you have a background in this as in engineering, a background in obviously in technology, and I'm wondering from the consumer side, not from the consultant side, when you've been out in the world and you've encountered AI and you've thought to yourself, this is exactly the right way that this company should be using AI. What's an example of that?
Well, I think the ones that that I struggle with most are where there is a human impact. And I'll give you two scenarios. Let's take facial recognition. Everybody's heard about it and has heard all the ways it could go back, right? So facial recognition as a technology, when it's biased and used in a law enforcement scenario, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But there is also facial recognition being used by startups to recognize human trafficking victims.
Right. And look, I got to tell you too. My parents recently flew internationally, and I talked to them, and they told me that in order to board the plane, they just walked on because they didn't have to give their boarding pass to anyone. The facial recognition recognized them.
Wow.
I think it was Delta, maybe. I don't even know.
Exactly.
That was pretty cool.
That's a great scenario.
Cool but creepy.
They were into it, and they don't like creepy stuff, right? They're kind of late adopters.
Because they like the ease of it?
Yeah, they like the ease of it.
Yes. The coolest one I've heard with facial recognition is when you're using it at traffic lights to recognize human trafficking victims. And that's where that nuance comes in, right? Yes, the technology might be biased, but if it is helping you rescue 80% more victims than you could without AI, then that's a decision that the organization and we need to make, right? It is biased, but it is still helping rescue 80% more. Without it, you would not get that 80% of the victims rescued, right? So it's an informed decision on, yes, we know it's biased, but we're still going to use it in this scenario because it's helping us. But in a law enforcement scenario, even if it's just 80%,